I didn't knock. It was my house. I opened the door quietly, still wearing the wristband from the hospital. 31 days in recovery. Broken ribs, a shattered leg, months of therapy ahead. But I survived. I was coming home. I walked up the stairs slowly, leaning on the rail. The lights were dim. I heard music, soft jazz, the kind Madison played when she wanted to feel classy. And then laughter. A man's voice. Hers. Giggles. That's when I saw it. My wife, naked under the sheets, with my business partner. And the worst part? She looked annoyed that I interrupted. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't even try to hide. She just said, "Oh, you're home early." Like I just walked in on her watching a show I wasn't invited to. I stood there, frozen. Dylan, the guy I built a company with, just smirked. Didn't even have the decency to pretend to be sorry. His shirt was on the floor next to the bottle of wine I bought them as a gift for our anniversary. I said nothing. What do you say when everything you thought was real explodes in a second? I turned around and walked out. Limped, actually. She didn't follow me. She just whispered something to Dylan and laughed. That laugh. It stuck with me more than the crash, more than the pain meds, more than the physical therapy. I died in that moment. But what came back wasn't the same man who left. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I kept replaying that moment over and over. The way she looked at me, not with guilt, not even surprise. Just irritation. Like I was the problem. Like I'd ruined her night. And Dylan, that smug bastard. He didn't even grab a blanket. Just sat up, half naked, like I walked in on some power move. The woman I'd trusted with my life, and the man I built my future with in my bed, in my house, while I was still bandaged from the car crash that almost killed me. I crashed at my brother Tyler's place that night. Didn't say much. Just told him I needed a couch and quiet. He handed me a beer and didn't ask questions. I stared at the ceiling, my chest tight. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was how easy it had come to them. Like it wasn't even their first time. Like they'd been waiting for me to disappear long enough to stop pretending. At 3:27 a.m., Madison called. I watched the screen light up. Madison Redheart. Still had her saved like that. I let it ring out. Then she texted, "We need to talk. I didn't mean for you to find out like that. Like there's a right way to find your wife being taken care of by your partner." Next morning, I woke up with something I hadn't felt in weeks. Clarity. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to ask why. That would give her too much power. I was going to erase her. Clean. Sharp. Quiet. First, I called Max Taylor. Max had been trying to buy out our company for 2 years. We always laughed him off, me and Dylan. But I remembered something Max said during a golf trip. "If you ever get tired of carrying that dead weight, I'll write a check that'll make you forget his name." Turns out, I was tired. And angry. Dangerous combo. By noon, I had a lawyer draw up the exit documents. I gave Max 51% of my shares. Cheap. I knew it had screwed Dylan over. That was the point. Then I called the locksmith. Changed every lock in the house. Security system too. Digital keys, codes, voice access. Her face was deleted from all of it. By 6 p.m. I was home. Alone. Peacefully. Her stuff? Already packed. I hired movers while I was at the lawyer's. Everything she owned, clothes, shoes, makeup, even her toothbrush, was in the garage. Labeled. Neat. I even left her a note. I kept the ring. "You can have the mirror." She showed up at 8. Crying. Screaming. Trying to punch in her old code at the door. Didn't work. She called again. I answered this time. "Why are you doing this?" she sobbed. "You can't just shut me out like this." I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. "I died in that car crash," I said calmly. "The man you cheated on doesn't live here anymore." Then I hung up. I watched through the security feed as she sat on the porch, mascara running, shaking. For a second, just one, I felt something. Not love. Not regret. Just closure. That night, I poured myself a glass of bourbon, lit a cigar I'd been saving, and toasted the empty seat across from me. Not to Madison. Not to Dylan. To freedom. But this wasn't over. Not yet. Because when you shatter a man like that, you better pray he stays broken. The thing about betrayal, it doesn't just burn bridges. It turns them into fuel. After I shut Madison out, I expected silence. Regret. Maybe even shame. But I forgot who I was dealing with. Madison didn't just lie. She believed her lies. She lived in them like a mansion, and if you dared to challenge them, she'd burn the whole thing down just to play the victim in the ashes. 3 days later, she showed up at my office. Well, not my office anymore. The receptionist looked confused when she tried to use her old keycard and got denied. She marched past security like she still had rank. I was in the conference room when I heard her voice echo down the hallway. I know he's in there. You think you can just cut me out of everything? She burst through the door like a storm in heels, her blonde hair in a messy bun, face red with rage and tears. The room went silent. Even Max raised his eyebrows. I didn't move, just leaned back in the chair and sipped my coffee. Madison, I said coldly, you're trespassing. She blinked, thrown off by the calm. She was expecting chaos, drama, begging. I gave her boredom. You sold the company? She hissed. To him? You did this to hurt Dylan. That was her move. Pretend this was about business. Pretend it wasn't personal. I stood up, walked to the door, held it open. You cheated on me in my bed, I said flatly. With a man who still uses Axe body spray. Don't talk to me about betrayal. She slapped me. The entire room gasped. I didn't flinch. I didn't touch my face. I just looked her dead in the eyes and whispered. You missed. She was dragged out by security, screaming, kicking, crying. But I wasn't done yet. See, Madison didn't just play dirty, she played dumb. She forgot about the joint accounts, the credit cards, the lease on the car I co-signed, the gym membership she put under my business. So I cut it all. Card declined. That was me. Car repossessed from her spin class. Me again. Locked out of the Netflix account. Petty. But also me. And just to twist the knife, I filed a civil complaint against Dylan for breach of fiduciary duty. He'd used company money, my money, to book the hotel for one of their little escapes. Receipts don't lie. His face when he got served? Priceless. But here's where it gets twisted. That night, Madison called me again. Her voice? Sweet. Soft. Manipulative. I messed up, she whispered. I was scared. You were in the hospital, and I didn't know if you'd make it. Dylan was just there. Oh, now I was supposed to feel guilty for almost dying? She kept going. We can fix this. You and me. I'll do whatever it takes. Just don't give up on us. I let the silence stretch long enough for her to hope. Then I said, you're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught doing it by the wrong version of me. Click. Blocked her. Deleted every photo, every message, every reminder. Except one. I kept a screenshot of that security cam footage. The moment I walked in. The frozen expression on her face. The betrayal in its rawest form. Not to torture myself. To remember. Because pain fades. But purpose? That sticks. And I was just getting started. It's wild how fast a life can fall apart when you kick out its foundation. After I froze the accounts and cut her off, Madison tried to play tough. Posted pictures on Instagram like she was thriving. New dress. New nails. Some champagne in a rooftop bar that definitely wasn't paid for by her anymore. But the cracks showed fast. One of her boss babe friends messaged me 2 days later asking if Madison was okay. Apparently, she'd been crashing at random places and crying every night. She was spinning a story, of course, telling people I'd gone cold after the accident, that I'd changed, that I was unstable. No, I just woke up. And if she thought social media sympathy would change anything, she clearly forgot who she married. I didn't go public. I didn't throw shade online. I didn't text her friends or family. I did something worse. I stayed silent. Nothing drives a narcissist crazier than indifference. Meanwhile, Dylan? He was already drowning. Max wasted no time tearing him apart. Took away his clients, blocked his access to key files, and moved him to a shared office with interns. I heard through the grapevine that Dylan came into the office drunk one morning, tried to act like nothing had changed. Max had him escorted out, terminated on the spot. And me? I was finally breathing again. But Madison didn't let go. She showed up at my brother's house one evening, holding a tray of lasagna like we were still playing house. Tyler answered the door. He doesn't want to see you, he said, arms crossed. I just want to talk to him, she insisted. You had 6 years to talk. You used your mouth for something else. Brutal, but fair. I watched through the blinds as she broke down on the porch, mascara running again. Part of me, some weak part that still remembered our wedding vows, almost went out there. But then I remembered her eyes, cold and bored, when I caught her in bed with Dylan. She was never going to feel guilt the way I felt pain. So I stayed put. That night, I got a message from a random account. Thought you should see this. Attached was a short video clip. Madison, drunk, at a bar, sitting on a guy's lap, whispering in his ear, kissing his neck. Timestamp: 3 nights after her sobbing voicemail about fixing us. My stomach didn't twist this time. No pain. No shock. Just confirmation that she hadn't changed. She couldn't. It wasn't in her. I poured another bourbon, sat back, and smiled. She wasn't trying to fix anything. She just hated losing. But then came the final nail. A call from her lawyer. Apparently, Madison wanted to negotiate spousal support. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the glass. She wasn't entitled to a damn cent. The house was mine. The company? Gone. Her job? She'd never had one. But her lawyer was slick. Said she'd be willing to settle quietly if I gave her a payout to move on. I told him to give her a message. Tell Madison this. I already paid. With years of my life. With trust I'll never get back. She's lucky I haven't sent her a bill for emotional damages and bleach for my sheets. Click. He didn't call back. That night, I stood in my backyard under the stars, breathing in the cold night air, and I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. But I knew Madison, and I knew this wasn't the end. Because some people don't just burn bridges. They build rafts from the ashes and try to float back into your life. I was finally moving on, or so I thought, until I got a call from my mom. Why is Madison saying you threw her out like garbage? She asked, her voice sharp. She said you left her with nothing. Of course she did. Madison had reached the family phase of her manipulative little redemption tour. I could already picture her crocodile tears over coffee with my mom, spinning some tragic tale of how I changed after the accident, how I pushed her away, how she was scared and lonely. I didn't get mad. I just texted my mom one sentence. Check your email. I sent her the security footage, the moment I walked in on Madison and Dylan in our bed. No sound. No explanations. Just the raw image. 2 minutes later, she called back, silent at first. Then she said, I'm so sorry, baby. That was all I needed. I wasn't trying to turn people against Madison. I just wasn't going to let her turn them against me. But she was relentless. She started messaging my ex-girlfriends, my coworkers, even one of my gym buddies. Always with some angle. He's unstable. He's drinking too much. He needs help. Classic smear campaign. When that didn't work, she turned sweet again. She sent a handwritten letter. I still wear your hoodie when I sleep. I miss how safe I felt with you. You're the only person who ever saw the real me. Yeah, I saw the real her all right. Naked. In my bed. With my business partner. She didn't want me back. She wanted control. But I was 3 moves ahead now. I hired a private investigator. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted proof. Of who she really was. What she was doing. Where she was staying. Who she was sleeping with. Took 3 days to get results. Apparently, Madison had been bouncing between friends' places and hooking up with a guy who worked at a car dealership. He had 2 kids and a live-in girlfriend. Classy. I kept the photos. Never used them. Just had them. Insurance. And then came the twist I didn't expect. I got a call from Dylan's fiancée. Her name was Brooke. We'd met once at a corporate retreat, but never talked much. I need to know the truth, she said. Did you really catch them together? I didn't hesitate. I sent her the same footage. 10 minutes later, she texted me. I packed his things. They're outside. We met up the next day. Not romantically. Just 2 broken people comparing damage. Turns out, Dylan had been cheating on Brooke for months. Madison was just one in a long list. But she was the last straw. Brooke was fierce. Smart. Not the kind to cry for long. Men like him think they're untouchable, she said, sipping her coffee. Let's remind him he's not. So we did. Together, we coordinated statements to the board about his misconduct. She had access to old texts and emails. I had business records and legal backing. Dylan wasn't just fired. He was blacklisted. No firm would touch him now. Not after word got out. And Madison? Well, she tried to spin it again. Claimed I was stalking her. That I sent Brooke to ruin her relationship. She even posted a long rant on social media about narcissistic exes who can't let go. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Her followers turned on her before I even had to lift a finger. One comment nailed it. Funny how you only found your conscience after the money ran out. Exactly. The storm was dying. The chaos was quieting. But I knew Madison too well to think she'd go down without one final explosion. And I was right. Because the next morning, I woke up to a police officer knocking on my door. The knock wasn't frantic. Just firm. Professional. But when you've been through hell, even a gentle knock at 7 a.m. feels like a bullet through the door. I opened it, still half asleep, wearing sweatpants and a faded hoodie. Mr. Walker? Yeah. Detective Mason, with Metro PD. We'd like to ask you a few questions. Two of them. One in uniform, one plain clothes. Serious expressions. Calm, but the kind of calm that usually comes before a storm. I stepped outside, heart already racing. What's this about? I asked. He looked down at a little notepad, then back at me. We received a report that you've been harassing your ex-wife. Following her. Threatening her. Madison. Of course. She couldn't win with sympathy, with lies, with manipulation, with crying. So she did what cowards always do when they've lost every other card. She called the cops. Is that what she told you? I said, jaw tight. We're just here to get your side. I invited them in. Calm. Cool. The same way you'd offer tea to strangers in a waiting room. My house was spotless, my voice even, my movements relaxed. Let me make this easy, I said, opening a file folder I'd kept near my desk ever since this madness started. Inside, copies of text messages, voicemails, screenshots, and photos. Dates, times, everything logged and printed. I handed it over like a business pitch. This is her reaching out to me 23 times in the last 2 weeks. That's her showing up at my office. At my brother's place. She even left food on my doorstep. I haven't replied since I blocked her the first time. The detective took his time flipping through. He raised an eyebrow at one of the voicemails. That your voice? Play it. She was crying in the recording, saying things like, I still need you. We can fix it. And then, I miss the way you used to make me feel safe. I know I hurt you. His partner looked at him. This doesn't sound like harassment. The uniformed one said quietly. They left 20 minutes later, apologizing for the inconvenience, but just doing their job. And me? I stood there in the doorway, watching their car drive off, realizing something cold and ugly. She wanted me in jail. She didn't want justice. She wanted revenge. And she was willing to weaponize the one system that always believes the tears first. That's when the switch flipped. No more playing nice. No more waiting for karma to do the heavy lifting. I wasn't just going to move on. I was going to erase her from my story completely. Burn every file. Clean every memory. Close every door she might ever use to crawl her way back in. I called my lawyer and filed for a restraining order. The irony? She tried to paint me as the threat, but now the court was telling her to stay 500 feet away from me. Her reaction was immediate. Blocked numbers. Unknown calls. Fake profiles messaging me just to talk. I didn't answer a single one. She tried to bait me with old photos, random apologies, even threats. Everything from, I'll tell everyone you hit me, to, we can still save this. It was pathetic. But the final straw? She showed up at my father's grave. Left a note there with a rose. I found out because my cousin saw her and called me, confused. The note said, your dad would want you to forgive me. That did it. I drove straight to the cemetery. Stood over the place where the only man I ever truly respected was buried, and whispered, don't worry, Dad. I've got this handled. And as I stood there in the silence, one thought hit me harder than anything else had since the day I came home from the hospital. She never loved me. Not the real me. She loved the man who didn't see her for what she was. And that man, he's gone. You want to know what true peace feels like? It's not silence. Not absence of pain. It's when the rage burns so clean, so focused, that it stops screaming and starts whispering. And every whisper says, you're never going back. That was me now. After the restraining order, Madison vanished for a bit. Weeks passed. No texts. No pop-ups at my door. No pathetic Instagram hints. I almost started to believe maybe, just maybe, she'd finally accepted it was over. But women like Madison don't just disappear. They reposition. She reemerged with a man named Trevor Hayes. Real estate guy. Big teeth. Bad taste. The kind of guy who leases a Lumbo for clout and takes mirror selfies at the gym. She plastered him all over her stories. Finally loved right. Real men protect you, not control you. Sometimes the second chapter is better than the first. Cute. I didn't care about the photos. But when I heard she told Trevor I was abusive, I couldn't sit back anymore. Because lies? Lies have reach. And I wasn't going to let her rewrite my story. I called Brooke, Dylan's ex. She'd heard the same from mutual acquaintances. Madison had been going full PR campaign. Victim mode, activated. So Brooke and I decided to go public, together. No rants. No name calling. Just the facts. We posted a side-by-side statement. How we both discovered the affair, how it destroyed 2 relationships, how we moved forward. We included receipts, blurred for privacy, but enough to prove it all happened. Madison's voice in voicemails. Dylan's emails. Dates. Times. Locations. It spread like wildfire. Comments flooded in. This is what accountability looks like. She tried to ruin this man and still played victim? Sis, you got caught. Just sit down. Trevor deleted every photo of her by morning. She tried to fight back, of course. She posted some story about private matters being exploited by toxic exes. No one bought it. Her follower count dropped. Friends stopped liking her posts. Even her own cousin commented, "Yikes," under one of her rants. Then she called. I don't know how she got a new number through, but I answered. Out of curiosity. Her voice was quiet. No anger. Just defeated. You happy now? She asked. You finally ruined me? I didn't say anything. Everyone hates me, she whispered. Even Trevor walked away. I have nothing left. Still, I stayed quiet. Then she said it. Maybe I deserved it. And in that moment, I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not vengeance. Just confirmation. She was finally looking in the mirror. I said one thing before I hung up. I didn't ruin you, Madison. You did that all by yourself. I just stopped protecting you from it. Click. That was the last time I ever heard her voice. No more games. No more manipulation. No more Madison. That night, I deleted the last folder on my computer labeled M. All the screenshots, voicemails, photos, evidence. I didn't need them anymore. She was no longer part of my life. And in that silence, I finally heard something I hadn't in months. My own breath. Steady. Unbothered. Alive. But I still had one last thing to do. Something I hadn't touched since I came back from the hospital. A letter. Half written. Started it the day before the crash. It was supposed to be an anniversary letter. I'd planned to give it to Madison over dinner. It talked about forever. About babies. About a future she clearly never wanted. I finished it. But not to her. I addressed it to the man I used to be. And I wrote, You loved blindly. You gave completely. You trusted easily. That wasn't weakness. That was you trying to build something real. But she didn't deserve that version of you. And now, you get to become someone stronger. Wiser. Harder to break. I folded it, placed it in a box, and locked it away. Not because I wanted to forget who I was, but because I was ready to remember who I could become. It's funny how healing works. It doesn't come like a movie ending, wrapped in a perfect moment or a single conversation. It creeps in. Quiet. Slow. Day by day. You wake up one morning, and for the first time, you don't think about her name before your feet hit the floor. That ache in your chest? It's not gone, but it doesn't rule you anymore. That was me now. 2 months after that final call, I was living again. Not surviving. Living. I'd moved into a new place, smaller, but mine. Every wall, every piece of furniture, every inch of it untouched by her memory. No perfume lingering in the sheets. No framed smiles built on lies. Just peace. One day, while unpacking a box, I found something that stopped me cold. Our wedding photo. She was in white, smiling like she'd just won the lottery. I was looking at her like a man who thought he'd made it. I stared at that photo for a long time. Not with sadness. Not even anger. Just realization. That guy didn't deserve what happened to him. I whispered. Then I shredded it. Not out of rage. Out of closure. Because sometimes, destroying what was is the only way to make space for what could be. Around that time, I got a message from Dylan. First one since the fallout. It was short. You got what you wanted. You happy now? I didn't reply. Because there's nothing left to say to a man who would gut his brother for 15 minutes of ego. Let him sit in the silence he helped create. But here's the part no one talks about. After the rage, after the heartbreak, after the war, you're left with yourself. And you start to ask, what do I do now? Who am I without the pain? For a while, I didn't know. My identity had been so tied to the betrayal, the revenge, the process of cleaning up the wreckage, that once it was over, the quiet felt uncomfortable. But then I remembered something my dad used to say. The worst storms uncover the strongest roots. So I started building again. From the ground up. I went back to the gym, not to escape, but to rebuild. I picked up boxing. Something about the discipline, the structure, the release. It worked. I reconnected with old friends. Not the party kind. The real ones. The ones who saw the blood on my knuckles and still pulled me in for a hug. And yeah, I started dating again. Slowly. Carefully. This time, eyes open. Not every woman is a Madison. But now I know how to spot one from a mile away. And here's what I'll tell you. If you're reading this, watching this, living this, you will survive. Not because you're strong, not because you're fearless, but because one day, the pain will get tired of punching a man who refuses to stay down. And on that day, you'll stand up, wipe the blood from your mouth, and realize she didn't break you. She freed you. Freed you from the illusion, from the fantasy, from the version of love that was really just control with pretty packaging. I don't miss her. I miss the idea of her, the version of her I built in my head. But the real Madison? She died the moment I opened that bedroom door and saw her with Dylan. That night in the hospital, they told me I was lucky to be alive. But the truth is, I didn't survive that crash. The old me didn't make it. The man who rose from that bed, he was forged in fire. Sharper, harder, unbreakable. And if I could go back, I wouldn't change a thing. Because sometimes, you have to lose everything to find yourself.